Republicans are giddy after the midterm election. Will Obamacare be repealed? And hero or zero of the week. All these stories and more coming up on the Rundown.
All right, stand by. 10 seconds.
Ready, camera.
And cue talent.
3, 2, 1. Record.
Thanks so much for joining us. This is The Rundown, where we run down some of the big stories making headlines. I'm your host, John Phillips. Joining me here in studio is the columnist for the Washington Times. You can read her at WashingtonTimes.com, Tammy Bruce. Michelle Fields has the day off, so let's go ahead and get to the top of the rundown. Ladies first, so Tammy, you're up.
Well, there you go. That's good to know. All of the newly elected GOP senators campaigned on repealing Obamacare. They say small businesses and the American people cannot afford the new regulations and tax increases set forth by President Obama. They added that Obamacare is not working and it's not too late to start over because every American deserves health care at a reasonable cost. We've heard that before, but we need to be serious about it this time. What's fascinating also is that you've got, I think, 28 of the 60 senators that voted for Obamacare at the end of this term are going to be out. Mm-hmm. These are significant events. In addition to the fact that the media kept saying that this was an election where there were no serious issues being discussed, well, they weren't looking at the local commercials and the nature of how the people of a state were being appealed to. This was the issue in 2010, but frankly, it was the issue in 1994 with Hillary Care. With the major GOP revolution then, it was the issue in 2010, it's the issue now, and the Republicans better take it seriously.
It's funny, I was talking to somebody who's not particularly political. They vote sometimes, not all the time. They kind of go whichever the way the winds are going. She voted for President Obama, I think twice.
Sure.
She turned out this election, she's a nurse, and she voted against all of the Democrats. She voted a straight Republican ticket. And I asked her, why did you do that?
Yeah.
She said, Obama has ruined my industry. I hate his guts, and I wanted to show the world how much I hated his guts. So I voted a straight Republican ticket.
Yeah.
And I think as much as we talked about other issues, as much as the beheading videos were on people's minds, and ISIS and Ebola and all these other issues, I think the two issues that motivated midterm election voters are unquestionably distrust and a hatred for Obamacare and illegal immigration. The fact that people know that after the election, with a stroke of a pen, he's going to unilaterally declare all the illegal aliens who are here, or at least as many of them as he possibly can, to be here legally, and people wanted to let him know that they hate his guts.
Yeah, I think it's and these are economic issues. And these usually do come together. I mean, you've got Obamacare is an economic issue. It affects every person's day, every day. In addition to the 92 million people who have dropped out of the labor force. Now, that might not be on television. Politicians might not be discussing it, but we don't need something on television to know that it's impacting our lives. I was on Fox and Alan Colmes said, the Democrats just need to have better communication. The communication is every day you don't get a paycheck. The communication is every day you go to 2 part-time jobs. We don't need politicians to tell us the condition of our lives. And I think that's been missed by the elite. And your point also is that we do see what it is now, the results of the absurdity of this policy. And it has been horrible. We also know that premiums are going to go up after the election. We know these games now. And the Americans said enough is enough.
What did you make of the press conference that we saw right after the election from President Obama, where he remained defiant? He essentially said, I reject the results of this midterm election because it's not the American people as I know them, implying that it was an older, more conservative, wider electorate, and they're not my people, and I talk to my people, and my people still like me, so a pox on the electorate. I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Remarkable.
Chris Matthews came out and said this guy is not living in reality.
Yeah, well, that's it. It is a basis when you're ruling under the pretend vision, where everything is pretend. You saw it there. This is why he can't govern. He's living in some other world where there's these technical things that are about who likes him and who doesn't. At one point he says, I like campaigning. I like going and shaking hands and getting hugs. I mean, this is the President of the United States probably the worst midterm in the history of the country. It is, and even if people did stay home, and some did, just like Republicans stayed home in 2012, that too is a statement. They don't love him enough to go out there and, he said, my policies are on the ballot. His own base said, we don't care. And everybody else who did go and vote says, we're going to make sure that this gets changed. It's a fantasy world. And this is where the Republicans have to come in the statement of the election, not just for Obama, but for the Republican leadership. You'd better take a stand and know how to stop him about amnesty without impeachment, and be able to defund aspects that would allow it to continue. They're going to have to be creative, and I think they can do it.
One more point on this before we move on.
Yeah.
Former boss of mine, liberal guy, nice guy, but his politics are extremely far to the left, posted after the results came in, it doesn't matter how many Republicans come out and vote against President Obama, he's still going to be black. That was the update. And I'll tell you what was funny about, they reflexively call us racist. Anytime we disagree with them, it's because we're racist. Fine, that's what they
Whatever,
think.
right?
State of Colorado voted for President Obama twice. They dumped his Democrat in the U.S. Senate.
That's right.
The state of North Carolina voted for President Obama the first time around. They dumped Kay Hagan. The state of Maryland is arguably one of the most Democratic states in the Union. They dumped his candidate for governor that he campaigned for. The state of Massachusetts, one of the most liberal states in the Union, they dumped the Democrat running for governor, Martha Coakley, for a second time.
His own state, Illinois, said adios, that went red. And we learned all of these things within 2 hours of the polls closing. Now, we wait for Louisiana.
Sure.
We have to wait for Alaska. This was, and it was those older people who also voted for Barack Obama. It's interesting. They voted for him too. The nation was hopeful. Everybody who did this, look, we're romantic people. We were lied to. These are disasters, but we're seeing a president, unlike Clinton in '94, who refused in that press conference to acknowledge it, to take a responsibility. Clinton, the reason he's such a fabulous politician, in '94 after that rout, Clinton said, I take responsibility for this. Clearly something has gone wrong. I'm going to work to find out what that is. I'm going to work to make some changes. You could juxtapose those two statements. It was like a different world. It is an arrogant, clueless smugness that has infected everything Obama does, and the American people now, and also speaking of issues of race, the iconic image for the night, Mia Love being hugged by her father, an immigrant who came here with $10 in his pocket, and the emotion, the passion in what this meant for them as Americans, that image will live as the sign, the symbol of what happened on November 4th.
And just to add a further exclamation point on Obama being a sore loser, he didn't call Mitch McConnell to congratulate him.
He's a little child. He's a little child. He's President Stompy Foot. I can't hear you. That's what we've got now in the White House.
And it wasn't just President Obama who had a hard time losing. It was also Democratic National Committee Vice Chairwoman Donna Brazile. She publicly expressed her anger on Twitter after the Democrats lost big time in the midterm election. Brazile sent out this tweet. It reads, quote, "Voters went for pot and Republicans. They must have gone for the pot first. The lesson here, never vote when you're stoned." A number of replies called her out for a case of sour grapes. She also said, we'll go kick their ass the next time around, and essentially rejected the electorate in the same way that President Obama did. And Republicans are frequently accused of living in a bubble where we only talk to each other and read what each other writes, and we aren't aware of the world outside of our own little world. And sometimes there's some truth to that. In this particular case, the Democrats were living in a bubble. It's not just Donna Brazile and President Obama. Rachel Maddow went on her show and was saying that the Democrats are going to win in South Dakota, or at least be competitive. Wendy Davis was supposed to be the second coming for that whole movement.
Wow.
Look at all the people that they spent their time talking about and were telling their viewers we're going to win on Election Day. Kay Hagan's going to win. And what happened?
Yeah, look, this is, and I think Republicans, conservatives, in a lot of ways because of the mainstream media, we can't hide from the other messages, because just by living our lives, we see it in the regular newspapers, the regular television shows. For liberals, their world is reinforced every day on the media, and they have to make an appointment to go watch Fox or to look at the cover of the Washington Times or the Investor's Business Daily. So we are automatically seeing more information, which I think, refines our point of view. In this particular case, though, for 6 years, John, they've gotten away with that. They've gotten away, the liberals have, with simply making statements. And then it kind of manifests because the electorates believed them. So they've used the media, they've made declarations, they've said X, Y, or Z, but their problem is they began to believe it themselves. They didn't recognize or perhaps acknowledge that, hey, people are believing the details we're telling them, or they're projecting their own hopes and dreams on us, that it's not because the American people are stupid, it's because they're romantic. And they don't expect to be lied to. So they did it this time as well. And the reality was, we weren't in a coma. Now we knew what the game was. We knew who was lying to us, and they had not adjusted to the fact that we had picked up on what the tricks were. It's like knowing what a magician's going to do and what the tricks are on stage. Suddenly, it's not interesting anymore or entertaining. And we had decided, and look, I think after 6 years, were flummoxed with the fact that it didn't work.
Suppose for a second you're an advisor to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's looking at the results. She's looking at how unpopular, how deeply unpopular President Obama is.
And how many of the people she campaigned for lost.
And
virtually
his
everyone.
Defiant tone at that press conference. How long does it take you before you publicly distance yourself from Obama when you were his Secretary of State? So it's going to come back up in the election that you're part of his team. What do you do here if you're her?
Well, you hope that the Republicans will remain stupid and will want to confront you and want to be nice and want to find, don't want to make you uncomfortable at all. I think, though, that she is, if anyone is as deluded as Obama, it's her.
Here's why I'm more optimistic about the Republicans this time than I have been in the past. When the Republicans were elected in 1994, they were elected to enact the contract with America. There were metrics that were set in place of what they needed to do to be successful. This time around, the Republicans were sent to Washington, D.C. to block Obama's agenda.
That's their mission. That's the mandate. I mean, the mandate, and it might just be rhetoric, but they must understand. Their mandate is to not work with Obama. Their mandate is to not make more legislation. We didn't send them there to make government bigger or to help make more things happen with government. We were sent there to stop Obama and to reverse things that had occurred. That's not the same as making more legislation. And it's not the same as we've got to find compromise and bipartisanship. No, the answer is the opposite. You've been sent as policemen and firemen and people who are there to be law enforcement, to get people arrested at the IRS, to get people arrested who made Fast and Furious happen. That's what you're there for. I don't know if they understand that. They're policy wonks. They want to govern. Maybe it's their nature. But they've got to stop being afraid of, making the Democrats afraid or upset. This is what even the Democrats are willing to step back because they know they're not going to sacrifice their children so that Barack Obama will feel better about himself into the volcano of Obama's narcissism. Nobody's going to toss their toddler and say, "Bye, Joey, boo!" Everyone's going to say, and has said, enough is enough, either by staying home or by voting. So the Republicans have to understand this, and it's this grassroots. It's the people who are PJTV subscribers, the viewers of this program on the internet. It is the grassroots who, in chiming in now, must be able to say, look, this is it, and this is what your job is, and we're going to have to keep their feet to the fire.
Okay, and now it's time for Hero or Zero. And this is where we pick a person or group for doing something very good or very bad. Tammy, take it away.
You know, that animation looks like you, but with glasses on.
Uh-oh.
Did you notice that? All right. My hero, speaking of the elections, is Mia Love. Why? Well, for running again after her loss in 2012. Love is the first black Republican woman to be elected to the House of Representatives. In an interview with CNN, she said, after they tried to tokenize her, she said that her skin tone and gender had nothing to do with getting elected. She said it was because of the solution she put forward. She added that Utah residents were not interested in dividing Americans based on race or gender, but electing people with integrity. I mean, people saw her at the Republican convention in 2012, her interview. She handled it. This is the other great thing. Clearly, they were trying to tokenize her. She pushed them back with strength, but with a lot of grace, because there was no real anger or being upset about it. It was kind of typical stuff. But even that interview was an example of the change that has occurred. This is a young woman who got no support from the GOP in 12. Effectively, her district was stolen. She lost by, I think, less than 700 votes. This time, the GOP chimed in a little bit. But this is, and she is, the example of genuine conservatism within a framework that looks more like America. And again, that iconic photograph, just being a first-generation American, being a Mormon, being a mom. This is a woman who is living the life of the radical individual, and it's very exciting. I'm glad she ran again.
Here's what I don't understand about CNN. She got elected because of some kind of Republican affirmative action, because she's black and because she's female. She's representing Utah. It's her and Carl Malone. That's it.
She said that. She's a mayor. She says, look, my constituency, are not African Americans. They didn't vote for me because of my skin color. I mean, effectively, she said, it's Utah. I mean, that's what's fabulous.
You have to fly Delta and switch planes in Salt Lake City once or twice to figure it out, I guess.
Yeah, it's an.
Jeez Louise.
For her to be putting herself up in that environment, to have the confidence to do it, to persuade and convince people, and then to have that wonderful presentation to the national audience as well, this is an exciting time, and she's the face of the future.
My zero is Alex Rodriguez. A-Rod, now known as A-Hole, confessed to buying and using performance-enhancing drugs when questioned by federal authorities back in January. A report surfaced in the Miami Herald this week about the confession to the Drug Enforcement Administration. Rodriguez said that he used steroids between late 2010 and October of 2012. He also admitted to knowing how to beat a urine test. So I think it was thinking about it for a long time and letting it marinate, and him just deciding, all right, I'm going to come out and be clean. Oh, wait, no, it's because they offered him immunity.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, that'll do it. I mean, sometimes the compulsion to confess does take over people. There's a story of a woman returning something she had taken from Pompeii 50 years ago during her honeymoon, and she felt guilty for half a century. And so she said, they're not going to arrest her or anything. She's an American, and she said sorry. But, there is the compulsion to confess. It does make you feel better, but I suppose it makes you feel better if you're going to get immunity. It helps.
Makes you feel a lot better.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for today's show. What do you think about our picks for Hero or Zero of the Week? Be sure to leave your comments in the comments section below. I'm John Phillips for Tammy Bruce, joining me here in Los Angeles. Thanks so much for watching The Rundown.